2, 1. Yes, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another installment of KBS. And today we are going back into the realms of After Dark. Turn down the lights. This is where you need your big boy pants on, because we are going into the emerald tablets of Reddit's r/no sleep for some scary, woo, high strangeness, and after dark content. Really, only one thing to ask you all out there: can you handle the woo? That's right. Welcome back. Welcome back. Gather round the very welcoming and warm campfire that I have lit for all of us here tonight, this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whatever time of day it is right now. Big warm welcome to something we ventured out on a long time ago, but it kind of fell by the wayside, and that's on me. But now we are going to pick up the KBS After Dark content. I often joke about how my body clock is on East Coast time in the US, and it's no joke. I literally am sometimes at my most lively come 2 a.m., 3 a.m., dare I say it, at 3:33, at almost the spookiest time of the middle of the night. Many of you have woken up and seen that particular time code, 3:33. Well, I can guarantee with it being 2:21 in the year of 2021, we're going to see 3:33 a.m. right here on your After Dark today. Yes, but it wouldn't be a KBS stream if I didn't take time out to thank you all for being here and to give Connie, there's Connie going in there, a very special shout out for being first in the chat room today for our first of many after stream or after dark streams that we'll be doing here on the channel. I need to up my game, ladies and gentlemen. We need more members on the channel. You need more content. And together we will take on the world. Well, maybe not, but we'll grow steadily, as we have been doing here on KBS2. And I want to thank everyone for that. We've had plus 83 members in the past 28 days. That is pretty dang good. I'm very, very happy. I hope you are all happy with the varied and hopefully regular content that I can bring you. So with that said, special shout out to Connie first in the chat room today. We've got Jocelyn all the way from Alaska. Lake House, Bet, C, Mick. Yes, we love the new soundboard.
Yes, indeed.
It's a cracker. We've got Bernays, Bet again. Wingnuts all the way from Bonnie, Scotland. He's under the data dome, or she's under the data dome. I should not assume gender these days. We've got the one, the only ZX. Leslie is in the house as well. I know Leslie is somebody who has been craving some more late night content, and we've got a lucky dip, a smorgasbord of offerings I've pulled up already, and we may do more. This may turn out really long. It may just be an hour and a half. Who knows? Nothing scripted, nothing planned, because we're into the realms of the After Dark, where things get weird and high strangeness is amplified, accentuated. And for people like me and you, seekers of the woo, no better time to be telling the odd ghost story than some random woo from, like I say, one of the stranger corners of the internet, the Emerald tablet of / or the Emerald webpage. And instead of the Emerald tablets of Toth, we'll have the Emerald webpage of Reddit. Nosleep. Now, if you've been over there before, you'll know it's an offering of the good, the bad, the ugly of people's own ghost stories, whether they're true, whether they're not. I provide, you decide. But I think it makes for some really good chill time, hanging time, and getting to know each other time even better right here on the channel. We have also got in the chat room, Malaya. Good to see you, Malaya. Locked and loaded for some late night woo. We've got Karen bowling all the way from Gettysburg. Wow, very historic location there. Good to see you. Jungle Hip is in the house. We've got Bernays Sauce, Bet again. Nothing as it seems. I've probably missed people out. 2, 4, Taz. You the man, Kev. Just a good old boy from Kentucky who never misses a show. I'm starting to get the distinct feeling that this late night might actually be a better idea. We've got 19 likes out of 31 people already. I think the audience has spoken. Hatchy, good to see you. Dropping all the sixes. Ooh.
6, 6, 6.
So I think we can come back into the chat. We'll get the stragglers, the ones coming in late. We'll name and shame them as we go on. No. I'm joking. But time to get a more serious head on, ladies and gentlemen, because we are going to be delving into the r/no sleep. Now, I've given a cursory glance over the stories that we're going to be going into today. I also have a book that my friend Jules, who'll be on the show with Nano Girl, sent me some time ago. I believe it was Jules. It was either Jules or Connie. And it's very rude of me for not remembering, but this has a smattering, an offering, a semi-smorgasbord of ghost and haunting and woo that we can throw into the mix here today. We've got it all going on, ladies and gents. So before we start, I want you to get in the mood. Go close the curtains, turn down the lights, because yes, we are heading into the woo. So, like I say, this is After Dark. It's no holds barred. It is the Woo Uncut Raw. Can you handle it? So first up today, our first story that we're going to get into is called Never Watch a Video called, quote, Nighttime Exploration. I found this written on a sheet of yellow notepaper on the floor when I moved into my new house. My landlord informed me that the previous homeowner went missing under mysterious circumstances 6 months before I bought the house. I'm posting this here as a reminder to always be careful online. Sometimes following your recommendations can take you to weird places. After finishing my shift late one Saturday night, all I felt like doing was collapsing on my bed and watching some YouTube while I fall asleep. As soon as I got home, I slammed the door shut and tumbled into my bed. My eyes were almost closed as I unlocked my phone and picked out a random video on my recommended page. The video was by some channel I'd never heard of and was some sort of pulp fiction narration or creepypasta reading. I'm not usually one for creepypasta stories. I much prefer watching more light-hearted videos in my free time, but on this occasion, it didn't really matter what I was watching, since I was out of it already. Now, I'm not sure why, but it just feels wrong to sleep without noise in the background. Ever since I was a child, I've always had some sort of sound going while I sleep. When I was 3, my parents bought me a white noise machine, and I used that right up until I got my first smartphone. If the noise stops or gets too quiet, I wake up. I never know why. It's just the way that I am. Anyway, I always have autoplay so that the sound doesn't stop for too long. I guess it doesn't really matter what ends up playing since I'm not really watching it anyway. But it's a funny thought. What kinds of videos play while I sleep? What if the audio enters my mind and implants dark, subliminal thoughts during the night? Maybe I'm just being paranoid about that, but whatever happened mere minutes ago has me shaking. It's the reason I'm typing this now, scrunched up behind my bed's headboard. At some point in the night, I woke up. It must have been around 1:30 a.m. and I noticed I could barely hear the video, which must have been the reason why my sleep ended so abruptly. I groggily opened my eyes and sat up. I saw the dim light of my phone screen shining up from the floor. Oh man, I nearly crapped myself there. Holy shamoly. Wow. Wow. Oh, you know it's a good stream when you're putting the willies up yourself, right? Back to it, Dave. Come on, Dave, get your head on. At some point in the night, I woke up. It must have been around 1:30 a.m. I noticed that I could barely hear the video, which must have been the reason why my sleep ended so abruptly. I groggily opened my eyes and sat up. I saw the dim light of my phone screen shining up from the floor beneath. I groaned and picked it up off the ground and saw the video that I was on. It was a video with 0 views. I wondered how many videos it took for me to get here. The first video I'd clicked on had about 100,000 views. The video's title was The video's title was Nighttime Exploration. The description consisted only of one word. A. Confused, I tapped on the screen, and that's when I noticed something was wrong with the video. I could see the amount of time that I had already watched, but not how much was left. I had only been watching it for 9 seconds, but I had no idea how long the full video was. At first, I wondered if I was actually watching a live stream, but thoroughly examining the description and everything around the video, I found that there was no indication of this being live. So I decided to watch it because I was awake by now and fairly intrigued. I had to stare at my screen for a few seconds before I realized just what it was I was looking at. The camera was pointing at a door. More specifically, it was pointing at the doorknob. The video was oddly silent, and I had to crank up the volume to the maximum to hear anything at all. And what I heard was breathing. The breathing was presumably that of the cameraman. It was scratchy and deep and sounded uneven, like he had run several miles to get to the door. I almost skipped to the next video in my recommendation when I saw nothing was happening, but right as my thumb was hovering over the next thumbnail, I noticed something on the screen. The camera shook as a hand, which belonged to the cameraman, emerged into view and wrapped itself around the doorknob. The hand seemed larger than normal and was wearing a solitary black glove. The glove had rubber on the palms and fingers, which allowed the hand to open the door. As the door swung open in the video, I heard a small squeal come from my phone speakers. At the same time, I thought I had heard a similar noise come from downstairs. I quickly turned my volume all the way down, but I didn't hear anything else. I figured I was just being paranoid and turned the volume back up. The door was now open, and the building, whoever this was had stepped in, was dark. Clearly, it was nighttime on the video too. We appeared to be in the doorway of a small house with a small hallway leading to a small living room, in which stood a flight of wooden stairs. Everything was extremely difficult to make out since the video was so dark, and since I was sitting in a dark room myself and was still somewhat drowsy. Now luckily the mysterious cameraman stood still for long enough in each place for me to take a good look at it. If he hadn't, there was no way I could have properly observed anything in the frames since, as I soon realised, there wasn't the option to pause the video. The small triangle in the middle of the screen was greyed out and didn't work for some reason. Again, I thought this was odd, but didn't really think about it. I was still tired, and for some reason, I was extremely curious as to where all of this would go. The cameraman began slowly through the hallway. His breathing became even more laboured as he moved, covering up the sounds of his footsteps in the video. Again, I thought I heard noises coming from downstairs, but I tried my best to ignore them. It was probably my imagination. But that was a mistake. As the man moved through the dark house, I began to notice some striking similarities between the house and the video and my own place of residence. The layout of the house was very similar to mine. The living room and the stairs were in the exact same place as mine were. What really scared me was what happened when the gloved man reached the end of the hallway. Right next to him was a long mahogany cabinet. You see, this cabinet was the exact same as the one my grandmother had given me when I had moved in a year ago. And it was on the old green vase I bought when I first got the cabinet, sat there in the middle of it. That was it. This was too uncanny. I looked up and I realised I'd left my door wide open. It was pitch black in the house. The only light visible was that of my phone screen. I felt a weird chill run down my body, despite being wrapped up in my blankets. I wanted to believe that all of this was just a nightmare, or just some weird coincidence, but none of it made sense. Everything was just too similar. I decided at this point it was time to turn off the video. However, when I tapped on the phone screen to bring up the option to leave the video, nothing happened. I tried again And again, and again, but nothing. I was frozen on the video. I couldn't leave. At this point, waves of terrifying thoughts were crashing through my head. Part of me was scared half to death, and the other part of me wanted to believe that this whole experience was somehow just all part of my imagination. Yet somehow I was still glued to the video. Or rather, I was glued to the live stream, as I was now convinced this was. I still held to some stupid hope that I was going crazy or just being overly paranoid. But for some reason, I just kept watching. The man was now standing in front of the vase. In absolute terror, I looked on as the gloved hand appeared as the cameraman reached out toward it. And for the first time, I saw the mystery man's arm. It was dressed all in black, but the material his clothing was made of was difficult to determine. He slowly reached out and rested his hand on the smooth glass of the vase, and his hand rested there for what felt like an hour, but was probably only a few seconds. His breathing only grew louder as he stood there with the camera pointing towards the glass object. Suddenly, the hand raised up and forcefully shoved the vase over and off the cabinet. He quickly moved the camera to show the vase falling on the floor. It broke into 1,000 pieces on the wood and created a resounding crash. It was this noise that broke me out of my trance. Because, you see, the noise didn't come from the video. I heard it, clear as day, from right beneath my bed. It was loud, and it was enough to completely wake me up and put me on full alert. I managed to turn the volume all the way down again, and shaking my fingers and picked it up. I beamed the light from the screen down to the floor, using it as a flashlight to see where I was stepping. I was too afraid to point it up at all, for fear that the person who had broken into my house would realise that I was awake, or I knew that he was there. I carefully slid out of my bed. Every sound seemed amplified in the darkness of the room, and as I slowly stood up, I listened out for any other noises in the house. I thought I heard breathing and heavy footsteps, but that could have been my mind playing tricks on me, right? Now that I was sure somebody was in the house, my imagination was running wild, trying to distract me. I began making my way towards the door at the end of the room, and my footsteps on the carpeted floor seemed to echo through the house, even though they probably weren't even noticeable from downstairs. I carefully dodged all the miscellaneous items that were strewn about the floor, like I was traversing a minefield. If I made even one noise that was too loud, I would probably have had a heart attack from the stress. I couldn't bear the thought of whoever was downstairs charging up to get me. I managed to reach the door and started to close it. I went as slow as I could to avoid making a sound. As the door was halfway closed, it unexpectedly creaked. I quickly held the door in its place, too scared to move a single muscle. I listened out into the house for any indication that he or they had heard it. I heard and saw nothing. I painstakingly continued, shutting the door. I'd made it past the creak in the hinges and closed it silently. The door was now only barely cracked open, and all I had to do was fully close it and lock it. After much deliberation, I decided that the best course of action was just to slam the door and lock it as fast as I could. I just had to hope that the intruder wouldn't break the door down. I sucked in a deep breath and closed the door all the way. In the complete silence, the sound resounded through the entire house. Still tense, I locked it and crept back to my bed. I felt slightly safer now that the door was locked. So I sat down on top of my covers and I looked back at my phone. All I could do now was wait and watch. The man was now in the doorway of the kitchen, panning the camera back and forth across the room. And after a while, he took a step into the room. The camera turned to the right and revealed my set of kitchen knives. Again, a hand came out and grabbed the handle of the largest knife. My breathing stopped. Sweat was pouring down my face, and I was just hoping that this night would end. I had no idea why this was happening to me. I didn't know why I couldn't leave the video. All I wanted was to be alone in my house. But now I was wondering if the intruder knew I was there. Maybe he thought I wasn't home or thought I was asleep. I held on to some little hope that I had the advantage. But if he thought he was alone, why would he grab the knife? I looked around the room for any kind of weapon, and the closest thing that I could find was the lamp on the nightstand. After confirming my weapon's location, I shuddered and checked the man's position. He was now walking through the living room again. I turned the volume up and leaned in, listening for anything. As I did this, I thought I heard a faint chuckle. It was very quiet, but noticeable. The intruder slowly walked through the room, and I decided that he was walking somewhat unevenly, since the camera was shaking. I figured that the man must have had a limp. The cameraman's steps were so slow that I checked the clock to see how long I had been watching. I determined that I had been suffering through this video for near to half an hour. At last, the man reached the foot of my stairs. He laboriously lifted his first foot onto the first step, then the next one, and then the next one. And I could see my door slowly come into frame as he ascended the stairs. He was climbing the steps right to my room. I'd never felt this level of fear before. The thought of an unknown assailant climbing the stairs right outside my door shook me to the bone. I wondered what I would do when he got here. Would he try to break in? How would I fight him with nothing but a lamp? I couldn't call the police. My phone was frozen on this stupid video. I was literally trapped. It only took a minute for the man to reach the top, but it felt like 1,000 lifetimes passed before he was at my door. And the whole time, I could hear his footsteps, one after another, after another. Clear as day, only feet away from me by now. The video showed him taking a few steps until he was standing merely inches away from it, then angling the camera to point it at the doorknob, just as he had at the beginning of the video. The video played on and kept going for several seconds, pointing at my door. And just then, the video ended. The audio stopped and the screen was completely froze on the shot of the doorknob. I could now hear the quiet sounds of a man breathing on the other side of the door. I beamed the light from my phone down at the bottom of the door, and sure enough, 2 long, distinct shadows confirmed my worst fear. The man was standing at my door. Alone and out of options, I decided just to hide. That's how I ended up here now, squeezed between my wall. That's how I ended up here now, squeezed between my wall and my bed's headboard, writing this out on a piece of paper. You see, my room doesn't have any windows, and the only way out is through the door that my intruder is blocking. I can't leave. I've tried everything. I can't turn off my phone. I can't leave the video. I'm trapped. It's been hours and he just won't leave. My only choices are to stay in here or fight. And I sure as hell can't fight him. If anyone finds this, it would look like I'm already gone. So all I ask you to do is just heed my warning and be careful on the internet, because you never know what you might find. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I think I got the Gooseflesh on about 3 or 4 times reading that story out, and that's not even the first time I read it. Dang, dudes and dudettes, is that a good start to our After Dark? Our r//
No sleep.
Boy, oh boy, eh? No more leaving it on autoplay tonight, ladies and gents. So no. I'll be back with you in just a moment, folks. We'll have more on the way, don't worry. And old Pearly's dropping in as well. Yes, big shout out to the Pearly T. Yes, indeed. She missed the first story. She'd fallen asleep in the chair. Oh, be careful what you fall asleep to. There we go. Now, I know I'm not the most skilled narrator in the world, but I tell you what, whoa, I got the creep factor going a little bit, right? And that's what I mean by After Dark on here. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you'll hate it. I don't know. Maybe some of you will love it. But it's going to be something I'm definitely going to be coming back with more of. And don't panic, folks. That's only story number 1. I've got more for us to get in here in a minute, but I'm going to take a nice little chilled stream with you all, drink my coffee, see what the chat are saying. I do believe that I creeped a few people out there. Listen, hey, don't shoot the storyteller, okay? But yes, and could I give a very special thank you to Leslie out there for supporting the channel. Thank you very, very much, Leslie. Leslie used PayPal, and that is always our preferred option around here. It cuts out the middleman of Google. I'm just saying. But listen, no fear, no sleep, because we have got more no sleep stories on the way. Want to see what people in the chat room are saying about that one. I enjoyed that one. I must admit, I thought that'd be a really good one to get us going. You scared me. Or is that you scarred me? Kev, dang. Don't want to scar anyone. Hey, creepypastas. Yes, Andy. Creepypastas, very good. Very good indeed. r/no sleep. It's a very, very, very tame second place to the creepypasta. Hey, we have to build our way up to creepypastas, dude. I have to get people kind of hardened round the edges for some for some full-time proper woo happening. A big shout out to our man Spooky Andy as well. You see, maybe this is the time of night that people want the streams on. I don't know. So I'm just going to check if my mother made it to the stream. Did you make it to the stream? Let's see. Yes, as you can tell, we're all rather nocturnal here. All rather nocturnal in the Baker clan. We like the late night hours, the wee hours as we call them here. And hold on, it's still on. Right, let's send my mother a link here. I know, folks, I know. The things you gotta do, eh? Here you go. There you go. Right then, so this is when I'm done at work. So Spooky Andy, this is a better time for you. That's good to know. It's good to know because I was speaking to Luna last night from down under, and I know the members having a problem with the time that I do the members stream at. So we'll be shifting times, days, doing extra member content. And if you want to become a member, please, please, please consider it. You don't have to, but the members button is down below. It's another way to support the channel, to keep us doing what we're doing here. But I'll be back anyway. You know, I can't get enough of you, the same as I hope you can't get enough of me. So I think we're about ready maybe to dive back into some more creepy little content, right? What do you think? He's ready for it? Can you handle the woo? Let me get a little drink of coffee first, ladies and gentlemen, and then we will get right into it. The next one is called People in My Town Are Being Replaced.
One by one.
Now, Jake says, what is the spectrum of prices to become a member? Jake, I have made it very, very accessible. I think I've set it to, I think it's £2 or $2. It's like the lowest you can set it. And then there's one that's way up there for people who want to go that extra yard. And don't worry, dude, once you're a member, you're a member. Every member gets all the same content. It's just to give people the chance, because like me, I know people are very, very hard up. They're struggling right now. And that's why I try to give as much away as we can for free. But in the end of the day, if people do want to support me, the memberships is one way to go. And we have great fun on our member streams, and we want more members. We also have the PayPal link. We've got Super Pal. But listen, enough said. Karen's already getting fed up in the chat room. Like, oh, for God's sake, exactly. So click on that link and you'll find out all about it. Go. So then we'll start off on this screen here for People in My Town Are Being Replaced one by one. So this one begins by saying, I dropped off a bag of Cheetos and a bottle of peach Snapple or Snapple on the counter in front of Amy. She scanned them lethargically. Her doughy hands had a unique blue hue to them. So did her face. I always found it funny how her features were clustered in the centre of her face and slightly recessed. It's like her skull was a sinkhole that was slowly consuming them. But her features were blank now, as she looked back at me, recalibrating. 582, she said robotically. Oh, wait, can I get a packet of smokes? I said. Sure, what kind? She said robotically. Oh, just the regular. So she nodded nervously and turned around, plucking a pack of Camel Crush off the shelves. I looked at them on the counter and back up at her, and I said, the regular, the Marlboro Golds. Oh, right, she chuckled, but acted flustered. She grabbed the pack and rang me up again. 10:27, she said robotically. I handed her a 20 and smirked at the sign on the counter, which read, "To buy tobacco products, your birthday must be on or before October the 11th, 1993. Be prepared to show proof of age." So I made my way back to the car and I said, "Amy's been taken," I said as I got back into the car with Katie. "She's blue all over, acting dumb, and gave me a packet of Camel Crush and didn't even card me." "Wait, she sold you cigarettes? But Amy knows you're only 17, Kat said. "Yep," I said, cupping my hand around the flame of Katie's palm tree covered lighter. "She's a goner. It's not her." And Katie replied to that. "That's the second one this month, along with Trent McKenna." "They're getting very ballsy," Katie said, and then pulled out the blue notebook she started to keep track of who had been replaced. Now, people have been getting replaced in Lacahexan for at least 3 years. The first person that Katie and I noticed was our middle school principal, then our postman, then one of our friend's brothers. The replacements, all of the same qualities: bluish skin, overly complacent mannerisms, and they literally act like they were born yesterday. They look ill and lifeless, but in a subtle way. And Katie and I immediately know it when we now see it. They act chipper and dull to avoid suspicion, as if their personalities just dissolved overnight. "So what do you think they're doing with the real Amy?" Katie asked as we pulled into the high school parking lot. "Experiments," I coughed. "Jiggery and jiggery. I'm telling you, it's the state lab that's doing all of this. There's got to be a way to prove it. We should go up there and look around." "Yeah," I agreed hesitantly. "Meet me in the locker room after homeroom and we'll sneak out." "Sounds like a deal," I said. I sat next to Trent McKenna in homeroom and he was looking especially waifish and ill since he had been replaced. Only a slight improvement on the obnoxious bully that he had been before his replacement. And as soon as I took the seat next to him, he shuddered, acted awkwardly, and got up and left. "What's wrong with you?" I asked. "You smell like smoke," he said, and walked away. I was starting to hate his replacement as much as I hated the real him. So the bell rang, and I stormed down the hall to the women's locker room. The little window in the far corner had been punched out at the beginning of the year, presumably by a peeping Tom. Not a tong, a Tom. It still hadn't been fixed and was just the right size to squeeze out of and make a break for the parking lot. Katie was already standing on the locker room bench, ready to climb out. "Give me a leg up," she said. I did, and climbed on top of the locker after her before wiggling my way out and landing on the dewy grass. We booked it to her car before anyone could notice that we were gone. The nuclear plant is about a 20-minute drive from Lacahexan Public High School, sorry. It was a misty fall day, and most of all the trees were already barren. There was nothing up this way except mildewing houses and abandoned strip malls. "Why do you think they're replacing people here?" Katie asked me. "Well, we're right next to the lab, and Lacahexan is a small town. They probably think that nobody will notice. And they'll ultimately have hundreds of people to run their experiments on," Katie said, and she was chewing her thumbnail and steering with her left hand. "It's probably a mind control thing. I remember reading about an MK Ultra thing that they did back in the day." "The government does this kind of thing all the time," I said. "They think they can just keep us in the dark about it." "Yeah, it's so they can test nuclear and biological weapons or something," Katie said. "I don't really know what it's for," I responded. "I just know whoever I talked to this morning wasn't the real Amy Gibson." The plant was sheathed with yards and yards of barbed wire. The lab, which maps showed to be on the south side of the plant, was impenetrable. There was nothing much to see from beyond its elaborate fencing, except an expanse of rotting leaves. A bit aggressive with the no smoking signs, don't you think? Katie asked, pointing to a series of signs that read smoking or open flame prohibited within 100 feet. Violators might be fined and jailed. I said, picking up Katie's pastel palm tree lighter from my pocket. I had swiped it earlier. Let's see what they're going to do about that. I lit one of my Marlboros, letting the flame dance back and forth for a few seconds before bringing it up to the cigarette, and Katie laughed. "Oh, you rebels," she said, as if they'd swoop in and arrest. Well, I didn't hear the end of Katie's sentence. Before she could finish, a teeth-shattering alarm blasted from the power plant. My ears ached and I dropped the lit cigarette and bolted to Katie's car. "What the hell?" she screamed as she put the car keys in the ignition and stamped on the gas. "Was that from the smoke? What was it?" I screamed over the fading alarm as we drove away. "They're not kidding. They really don't want people smoking around there. What the hell?" So we sped to a red light, suspended in a four-way intersection, and Katie stomped on the brakes. "I'm not going back there," she said. "Absolutely. That gave me the creeps," I echoed. "What do we do now?" "Well, we should come up with a plan. Let's go to the mall. We can't go back to my house. My mom is home," I said. "Same. My mom is still sleeping," Katie said. And her mom slept a lot more since Katie's older brother had died 2 years ago. So we spent a few hours walking around and conspiring at the mall before Katie dropped me at home at 3:15 sharp. "Elisa," I heard my mum yell from the kitchen. She was already in her scrubs eating dinner. "Don't try to pull one over on me. I know you skipped school today," she said. "You should be getting your grades up, taking the SAT. Don't even care about going to college, do you?" "Not really," I answered honestly. "I have more important things to worry about right now." "Oh, like what?" she said. Oh, wrong one. Like the fact that people in this town are being replaced. Amy Gibson from the gas station is acting like a robot. "There you go with your stupid conspiracies again. You should hear yourself," she scoffed. It's at that point my phone buzzed from my back pocket, and I retreated to my room to answer it. It was Katie. She sounded panicked. "I need you to come over here right now," she said breathlessly. "What is it?" I asked. "It's my mum." "They've replaced my mum." That is the first part of that story, and we will get the second part of that in just a moment, ladies and gentlemen, after I have a little drink of coffee and I'll let you absorb the After Dark, the No Sleep, the KBS. Big shout out to Cinny Monk. As well, supper's calling me, and I can't resist watching a movie when it's offered. Take care, everyone, and thanks, Kev, for all the shows today. Cinny Monk, thank you so much. We have got Reynold Hergenrother. What a great name. Story time, I see. Yes, indeed. We just had part one of People in My Town Are Being Replaced. And now we're about to get into part two, which is called My Best Friend's Mum is the Latest Victim. Who's taking them? Where did they go? Maybe the state lab is the only place that knows.
wow, wow, wow. Bow, wow, wow, wow. Wow. Luna is in the
Luna is in the building. A g'day. G'day, Luna? Yes, indeed. Gather around the campfire for a yarn. We're having a campfire yarn, Luna. We've turned out the lights. It's KBS.
After dark.
Yes, indeed, indeed. Now listen, compared to the first story, I would be blatantly lying if I was to tell you that this one was anywhere near the standard of the first story we had. However, it's a kind of random smorgasbord of offerings we have today. Part 2 will be coming up of this latest. People are being replaced in my town, and we just got to the part where our friend's mum, Katie's mum, had been replaced. Talking of mums, my mum is going to bed. It has got too late for her. It's approaching the 3:33 witching hour. Yes, indeed. It's 3:08 a.m. over here if you're in the UK right now. And I know we've got Glasgow people in the house. That's how us Glasgow people rock. Sleeping is for the dead, ladies and gentlemen. I have set my spacesuit. Both Kev and Dave operate on 12-hour shifts. We take turns and we keep going and we keep going. And that's why we're going to keep coming back with more After Dark content. Maybe it isn't obvious to you as it is to me right now. However, I am far more energetic and able to relax more at this time of night as opposed to the pre-show stream. You got to appreciate there's a lot going on in my head when we've got the pre-show stream going on. We've got content for the pre-show stream. We do what we do there. But always in the back and moving ever forward in my mind to the front is the fact that we've got the KBS radio show coming up. So that's always a bit of a distraction. End up rushing sometimes on the pre-show streams. But this here, well, we can while the night away, ladies and gentlemen. We can take our time. I can drink copious amounts of coffee, which I would be doing if we weren't streaming anyway. Yes, Mammoth Hunter, oh my. It's as if the Australians just got the notification, so g'day Mammoth. Yes, g'day Jessica. Yeah, see, probably better the Jessica word, right? So, yes, we are doing the no sleep thing. We're getting down, we're getting weird, we're getting groovy. We are going into the woo. And to do that, ladies and gents, we gather around the KBS campfire. So, without any further ado, let us go back to part 2 of People in My Town Are Being Replaced. Part 2. My best friend's mum is the latest victim. Oh, yes, indeed. So then, let's get back into it, folks. So the last story finished with Katie phoning frantically to tell her friend that her mum had been replaced. On top of Amy from the local store, who had a bluish kind of hue to her, acting all robotic, selling cigarettes when she shouldn't have been. All that good stuff. And where are these people going? They just disappear. Psh. And then they're replaced by almost the changelings that we talked about on the show not long ago. Yes, the changelings. So, it starts off here. It says, I looked at Katie's mum swathed in the comforter on the bed. She was fast asleep. Her arm was draped over her face, and it looked pallid. The same ghostly shade of blue, in fact, that differentiated all the other replacements from the humans. Have you called your dad yet? I asked. No, he's still in the garage, Katie said. He thinks she's just depressed or something. Katie's mum was snoring softly. Probably not quite like that, but she was asleep when I got back, Katie said. But when she woke up, she came downstairs and asked me what she could make me for dinner. Dad has done all the cooking for the last 18 months. Well, that's weird, I said. Yeah, very suspicious. So I just told her, oh, make my favourite food in the world. And she was like, so burgers? But you ate ground meat, I responded. Exactly. Like I said, it's not her, Katie whispered. That's not my mum. So we went outside and sat in the porch swing for a while. Katie had brought out her blue notebook where she kept a list of all the replacements. She was hesitant to write her mum's name down. What the hell are we going to do? She said softly. So I put my hand on her back. We'll figure out a way to get your mum back, even if we have to break into that damn lab. There must be a way to get them back. I fished a pack of Marlboro Golds out of my pocket and handed Katie one. I heard the soft padding of footsteps coming from the living room. Her mum was awake, and she drifted around aimlessly in her airy grey pyjamas. We watched her through the screen door, and she stood in the kitchen and just lifted one dish out of the sink. Just stood there, examining it, turning it in her hands, and then just placed it back on the pile. Well, that was weird, I whispered. It's like she's never seen a plate before. Her mum then veered towards us and we scrambled to divert our eyes. Katie lit her cigarette and held the lighter out towards me, and her mum pushed open the screen door and leaned out towards us. Katie, she shouted, why are you lighting a cigarette with an open flame in the house? Are you out of your damn mind? We're on the porch, Ma, Katie said. I don't care, just put that flame out. The screen door slammed shut behind her as she headed inside and back up the stairs. Well, she's never cared about me smoking on the porch before, Katie said. We sat in silence for a long time, just pondering what had happened. My head was a muddle of fuzzy possibilities, scanning through everything I'd gathered, in the hopes of getting Katie's mum back. It was then that it suddenly came to me. That's it, I said. They hate fire. Or they hate smoking. What? Remember the loud alarm when I lit the cigarette outside the lab? And in the homeroom today, Trent McKenna moved away from me because I smelled like smoke, he said. They must be terrified of fire and smoke. So Katie nodded. She looked stoic, the way that she often looked before she was about to cry. I could smoke her out, she said. Make her prove that she's not my mum. She got up from the porch swing and went into the shed, returning seconds later with a red canister of gasoline. Well, what the hell are you doing? I asked. Can I borrow your pack of cigarettes? Katie said. She had a manic look in her eyes, little baby hairs around her temples sticking out, illuminated by the afternoon sun. I handed her the pack of cigarettes and followed her inside. Bad move. Upstairs, her mum was bundled up in the comforter again. She threw it off and stood up when she saw Katie approach with a can of gas. I decided to quit smoking, Katie said definitively. Good for you, honey, her mum said. But why are you carrying that? Katie threw the pack of Marlboros on the floor in front of her mother and doused it with gasoline. Oh, you know, I'm just making it official, Katie said. Now, tell me, who are you? I stood in the doorframe, stunned. What do you mean? I'm your mother, Katie's mum shouted. Where did they take her? Katie screamed. What are they going to do to her? I don't know what you're talking about, honey. We've talked about this. You are not my mother. Tell me where she is. At this point, Katie was roaring now. She brandished her pastel palm tree covered lighter from her pocket and held it behind her back. Katie, just don't, I said, but my voice sounded so quiet amidst the shouting. It was like I was talking in a dream. I am. Please, Katie. I don't know what you're talking about. Get out. Get out, Katie screamed, and she dropped the lighter into the pool of gas. The room was lit with an orange hue immediately. Snaking from the pack of Marlboros across the floor, and finally to her mother's grey pyjamas. Flames licked up her body, and from one instant, she was a pillar of fire. I don't need a lawyer, I'll talk, I said to the cop who was sent in to interview me. He was wearing a wide-brimmed hat like he was in the Wild West movie. Laxahaxon or Lackahaxon County Police read his badge. You said Katie believed that her mum had been replaced, he asked, opening a yellow legal pad. Yes, by some kind of clone. And this was an ongoing theory that you and Katie were developing? That people in Lackahaxon were systematically being replaced? Yes, I answered. An empty bottle of Nestle chocolate milk rattled on the metal table. And just who is it that you think is doing this replacing, he asked. It's the government, or specifically the lab at the nuclear power plant, I tell you. They're doing experiments on people. The cop started laughing, not chuckling under his breath, but really laughing. I narrowed my eyes at him. You really do just think I'm crazy, don't you? I said. No, I think you're not I just think you're not thinking big enough. What do you mean? I asked. He set his hat down on the table next to the bottle. Well, the government isn't stealing people in Lackahaxon. We are. What? The room spun round me. It was stratified with bright light and a rhythmic pulsing that buzzed in my ears. The cop's body fell away, melting like candle wax, and he became a painful orb of light, moving erratically in all directions, terrifying in its ambiguity. I felt pain. Suddenly it snapped into focus, and I was staring at the cop again. Just as I thought. You're too weak to perceive my true form, he said. What are you? The old ones. Ladies and gentlemen, the old ones. The good people. We can inhabit any form we choose. Your teachers, your friends, your mother, even your police officers. Damn, we're the ones replacing people in Lackahaxon. Why? I asked. Well, we used to inhabit this land before your race of humans settled it. They drove us underground. But now we want it back. And to do that, we'll replace every human in this town until it's only us that remain. Who have you taken? Oh, only about 70 people so far. Funny how many humans you can replace without literally anyone noticing. Did you take Katie's mum, I asked. No. Actually, we hadn't. We had no plans to take her. I swallowed. Who is it you plan to take next? It was then that the old one flipped the pages of yellow legal pad and folded his hand in his lap. Due to this little incident, I suppose we'll be taking you.
The old ones.
Hatchy, I didn't know you were at home alone with your dog. Oh, dang, dude. Turn down the lights, my friend. Turn them down. And listen, if you hear any noise, don't overly worry about it. Not the first time. Wait, was that noise again? on in, War. Come on in, War. Ah, yes, the middle of the night streams brings back the most interesting of folk, eh? Eh? Good to see you, War. Oh, Jocelyn is alone in Alaska with her cat. I promise to keep it tame-ish. The next story is going to take things to the levels of bizarre that I think are just about permissible. Just about weird enough to get away with. Oh boy, you ain't heard nothing yet, folks. Ah, yes, indeed. Dave, ladies and gentlemen, whoever shouted out in the chat room, I think it was Nacy. Have your dopamine, Nacy. Nacy, a.k.a. Kevin. A.k.a. Kevin Shores. A.k.a. the Freaky Friday. Woo Skateer, who rides with Scotty and that guy Kev Baker on Freaky Friday, funnily enough, every Friday. Yes, indeed. We're here, we're live, and we're going through the night after dark. No sleep, sleepy pasta, creepy pasta, not sleepy pasta. Whoa! Some really tired ravioli there, indeed. Ravioli macaroni. Who knows? Who knows? Macaroni and cheese or macaroni and Z's. Oh, damn, dude. Damn. Now listen, the next story is the last one that I've got pulled up, but never fear, there'll be more woo here. I ain't going anywhere yet. I'm full of beans. We'll have more ghostly and weird and high strange woo coming. But I need to take one moment. One moment, Sam. Seriously? I need to take one moment to go and make a quick cup of coffee. I'm actually a bit worried about walking through the house alone. I'm not really. I've got balls of steel. Here we go. I will put on the crazy tunes that we have kicking about here in the background. And we'll be back in just a moment for more After Dark. There we go. So into the chat room for a moment. Are we drinking my coffee, chill out with the good people on the After Dark? You enjoying it so far? Be honest. Come on. I need to know. I need the feedback. And listen. Don't hold back. Don't be scathing in your criticism if you've got it. But I do need to know what you people like. And I must admit, when I was a young dude growing up in the Highlands of Scotland, I used to like the winter nights. I'd have been really young. I remember my gran, my mum, my auntie, sometimes there'd be other people round. And from time to time, we'd get power cuts. When the power cuts were on, it was the old coal fire, so that would be all stoked high. That'd be roaring away, get a bit of light from that. You'd have the candles burning, and it would invariably get into like old wives' tales and local ghost stories and the hooved guy. Remember that story about the good-looking, handsome devil in the kilt on the dance floor in Fort Augustus? And, you know, one of the girls in the village thought she was the luckiest girl going that night because she got this handsome devil's attention, and they were dancing the night away. They were doing their Strip the Willows, the Gay Gordons, and all the other good Highland dances back in the day, just after World War II, I believe. It might even have been earlier than that. Regardless, when the lights came on at night, the gentleman in question looked shell-shocked and stunned. And the lady who had been dancing with this fine-looking man, and a fine-looking man he was, he'd incurred the wrath and the jealousy of all the local guys in the village, you know. Who's this incomer, this tourist coming in and stealing all the women? That's the kind of way people thought, and they still think up that way. And only for the lady to start looking down the length of said good-looking gentleman, and he didn't have the traditional long socks on and the tied-up shoes that you wear with a kilt. Nah, bit of a problem there, because he didn't have ordinary feet. He was a hoofed gentleman, a very handsome man with cloven feet. And he ran out of that dance hall, and they chased him, and they chased him, until he went, psh, just disappeared. Just disappeared. And that story is so common all around the world. You know, some might call it the devil. Some will call it the jinn, a demon, a ghost, a ghoulie, an ooga booga. You call it what you will. Something very real about the supernatural, ladies and gentlemen. And, you know, maybe you need to experience it first to truly, truly get a taste of what we're talking about. I've had my brushes with it, and I don't recommend it. In fact, I recommend that you stay as far from it as possible. But these things, sometimes you don't have to go looking for them to land on your doorstep. And that's the weird, the wonderful, and the woo. Boy, do we love our woo around here. Now, I have to say, oh, one word. You know, you mentioned the kilts, and the ladies are going mad in the chat room. For all you know, I could be sitting here kilted up below the desk, or I could be absolutely naked, and I could have hoofed legs. Who knows? But we are about to get into a story that is borderline bizarre, really strange, and takes us right across the middle of the harshest part of the uncanny valley. Okay? I may get away with this one. We may not. We're going to go for it, though, because this was one of the first stories that I had found when I went to go and source some of this information. Okay? It was a few weeks ago. I've been planning to get back into this, and I came across a story. And the story itself is called "A Man in a Costume is Pretending to Be My Mum's Dog." So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, let me take you into the weird and bizarre world of the No Sleep, about a man dressed in a dog costume, pretending to be somebody's dog. Nothing quite as off-putting, disturbing, and uncomfortable as the thought of walking into a loved one's home only to see them fawning and swooning over what they think is their beloved pet, only it's not their beloved pet. It's a human imposter. Now, whether this is real or not, I don't know. But I tell you, think about just how weird the world has gotten. And let's go into the weird and wonderful world of the man in a costume who's pretending to be my mother's dog. I haven't heard from my mum for about 3 days. That was around the time her beagle Buster died, and she was really depressed, so I decided to give her some peace. Some space and some peace, so she could cope. So when she called me out of the blue yesterday, sounding all bright and chipper, that was when I knew something had happened. We live in a small town, Iowa, a couple of kilometers north of Spirit Lake, and there isn't really much to do to pass the time. And since my dad passed and I moved out for college, my mum relied heavily on Buster for company. So I finished up my last semester and went back home ready to fit back into life, at least until it was time to go job hunting. And that's when she told me the news about Buster. So I tried my best to console her and even promised to get her a new dog, but she wouldn't hear a word of it. Buster was a gift from my dad, you see, for their 12th anniversary, so to her, Buster was the last thing that made sense to her, and losing him meant losing my dad all over again. I spent a few nights at her house to try and cheer her up before getting back to my own apartment about 10 minutes away, until I got her phone call. The sun hadn't even risen properly above the horizon when I heard my phone rattling on the nightstand. Mikey, you need to get over here right now. You wouldn't believe who came to visit me last night. I'd just woken up from a deep sleep and her loud, energetic tone was a little overwhelming, to be honest. Buster! He must have come in through the doggy door, although I don't know how because he's just so big now. I paused for a minute trying to make sense of what it was I was actually hearing. I looked at my phone screen to make sure it was my mum, and yep, sure enough it was, and I also glanced at the time to see it was just after 5:05 a.m. And ladies and gentlemen, in the UK right now, away from the story, it is
3:33 a.m.
So if things are going to go weird or a little wonky or a little woo on the stream, now is probably the time to be paying attention. So what's going on here, I hear you say? Well, it says, are you sure it isn't just another beagle? Couldn't it be somebody else's dog, I said. No, of course it's him. I'd know my Buster anywhere. Come over now and say hi. So I wanted to ask more, but between my sleepy haze and obvious confusion, all I managed was, okay. I looked at my phone screen again, unsure if what just happened was a really vivid dream or if Mum had fallen into some psychotic episode. I put on a sweater and slipped on my jeans and sneakers before leaving for her house. All the while over, I was genuinely worried about her mental health, and I was blaming myself. You know, Dad passed around the same time I started college, out of state, and he was barely in the ground when I just got up and left my mum on her own. The more I thought about it, the more likely it seemed that I was the one to blame for all of this, and to make matters worse, I still hadn't even gone and gotten a job. As I bent the corner, I half expected to see Buster running around our front lawn as I had seen him so many times before when walking home from high school, but there was no dog. There wouldn't be. Possibly inside then, I thought. So I walked up the cobblestone walkway and heard my mum making her ridiculous baby talk that I would often hear her when Buster was still alive. Who's your Buster? Who's your big Buster? Oh, Buster, Buster, Buster. You know, that kind of thing. As I walked in through the front door, nothing could prepare me for what my eyes were about to see. My eyes focused on the room, and I saw my mum sitting on the couch as I had seen her 100 million times before, with a large black mask curled at her feet. As my eyes adjusted to the light of the house, I stood frozen, unable to say anything. Oh, Mikey, doesn't he look just great? What I saw was a man, a 6'8" man. He could have been closer to 7 feet tall for all I knew from where I stood, wearing a matte black dog mask and a full bloody body jumpsuit. And the man was so tall, he almost completely covered the white carpet Mum had laid out on the ground for him. I don't know where he was, but I'm just so happy to have my big man back. Oh, who's a Buster? Mum said as she pat the man's stomach. I still couldn't move. I could literally say nothing. Through the eye holes of the mask, I could see the man studying me intently with a pang of fear struck my chest. He looked at me as if he was plotting his next move. thinking of what to do. What exactly have I just stumbled into here? I shifted my gaze to my mum and I saw that she was in her glee. Oh, your Buster. He's a big boy. Oh, he loves a Buster. The only time I saw her this happy was when I told her I'd got accepted to Nebraska State. I felt so sincere and warm, it tore me up inside. Sorry, it felt so sincere and warm, it tore me up inside. Serious, Dave. Then I looked back down to the man and looked at his eyes again through the holes of his mask. I could only see his eyes, but I could swear they had a really smug look, as if to say, ha ha, yeah, look at me, I made her this happy when you couldn't, punk. But of course he didn't say anything. I mean, after all, he was a dog, and dogs don't talk, right? My God, what's going on here? I had to say something. Mum, I'm sorry, but what the I blurted out. Of course, that's not exactly the words I wanted to come out of my mouth, but the shock of the situation kind of dictated it. She raised her head, and the warm, doting smile melted from her face. Oh, Mikey, what's your problem? Buster's come back, can you see that? Mum, who is that? Where did he come from? Mum looked back at me like I had a skull full of That isn't funny, Mikey. You're scaring Buster with your loud talking. You need to cut that out. Now, my mum isn't much of a prankster. Come to think of it, she wasn't much of anything. For as long as I could remember, she pretty much lived for her family. Whatever Dad and I liked, she liked as well. I still held out hope that this was some elaborate joke at my expense. But her eyes and facial expression behind her comically tiny Looney Tunes glasses made me realise that something was terribly, terribly wrong here. Just when I thought it couldn't get worse, whimpers coming from that thing lying on the ground. Oh, what's wrong, Buzzy, my little Buster? You want to go out, don't you? You want to go out? Okay, well, stay inside with Mama. I could feel beads of sweat forming below my hairline in clusters. I literally had no idea what to do. Did I call the police? Clearly my mum was unwell if she felt this thing, it, him, he was her dog. Then, without warning, the man got up on all fours and started growling at me. Grrr. I felt that pang of fear in my chest again, harder this time. I clearly couldn't count on my mum for help. She was gone. So it was left for me to do what I was going to do. The man in the suit looked like he had at least 50 pounds on me, and he was clearly deranged. I wonder what gave that away. I wonder what clued him up to the fact he was deranged. Do you think it was, A, the dog suit he was in? Was it the fact he was like his mum was tickling his belly, or now that he was on all fours growling at him? Deranged? That's one word for it. That's the Kev Baker kind of cliff notes I'm adding in there. Deranged? Buster, come back here. Leave Mikey alone. He just wants to play with you, Mikey. He hasn't seen you for a long time. Oh, you, Buster. Oh, goodbye, Buster. Then I could see him tensing up as if he was about to charge. A grown man dressed as a dog, getting ready to charge. Before waiting, I ran out the open door and back into the street, not stopping until I got home. As I type this now, it seems ridiculous to me running from a grown man in a dog costume, but I don't know. There was something pretty unsettling about the whole incident. Clearly, it was a man dressed as a dog, but I don't know. His eyes, while they were definitely human, had something else behind them that seemed inhuman and animalistic. Yes, he was a deranged pervert. He'd moved into your mum's house. He had seized upon her grief, and he was like a dog imposter. I tell you, people do the strangest things. So back to the story, it says, I walked over to my apartment trying to make sense of, well, what is quite frankly the nonsensical, and what happened that day. Who was that person? Where did he come from? Was he dangerous? But last and definitely not least, what do I do now? Do I go to the police? I tell them my mum's home and been invaded by a man who's dressed up as a dog and pretending to be our dead dog. Even if I did convince them to come to the home with me, what would they have done? I read a story online once where a man came out with some strange fetish, decided to live out the rest of his days as a horse in California with his wife, now owner, and there wasn't anything that the authorities could do about it. Even if the police did something, is that really what I wanted to put my mum through? What, as opposed to leaving her with a raging gimp suit wearing dog pretending pervert? Come on, man. Exactly. Punch right in the beak. That's what should have happened. No talking. Punch said dog right in the beak. He's not a dog, he's a man dog. Between Dad's death and my going away, she clearly had a lot of mental baggage. And a trip to the police station to file a report, assuming that she would want to in the first place, was the last thing that she needed, right? But still, leaving her in there with, well, whatever the that was. I don't know if that was a solution either. I sat in my bed and thought it over for a while until I realised that I really had to do something. I walked back over to my mum's house and the front door was still open. I was still unsure how to approach the situation. Well, granted, there isn't really a handbook on tackling imposters that have moved into your parental home under the guise of being like a family pet. It's probably a really, really once-in-a-lifetime situation, so you can be forgiven for not knowing what to do. I need a drink of coffee, ladies and gentlemen. This is busy work. I'm trying to struggle to think how I would adapt to this outrageous position that this man's been thrust into. That's when I saw one of my old neighbours, Ms. Johansson, in her patio, looking in the direction of my house. I whistled her over to the sidewalk. You see, that's wrong as well. You see, now you're actually starting to treat the neighbours like they're the animal. You just whistled her over to the sidewalk. Come on, man. Careful not to make too much noise for my mum or Buster to notice. Mikey, is your mum okay? Why do you ask? Why do you bloody think? She studied me carefully. And she said, well, she's been laughing and giggling really loud. And just before I saw you, she started cursing at someone. Now, I know she lives alone since you left, so I don't really know what's going on. Maybe she has the TV on, I said. Well, the thing is, it's not just that. Last night, I got up to use the washroom and last night, I got up to use the washroom and through the window, I saw a huge dog on your front lawn. It was about the size of a Great Dane. In fact, it might even have been bigger. I thought about calling animal control, but who would believe an old cook like me? Who would believe that indeed, I thought to myself. Thanks, Mrs. Johansson. I think maybe I should call the police. Well, usually Miss Johansson was the kind of old biddy to ask why, but she sensed the urgency of the situation and she hurried inside to call the cops. No sooner had I turned my back to face the house, but I heard my mum's screams. I hopped the wall of the house and walked inside to see the dog man trying to mount my mother's leg as she fought it off. Oh my goodness, this has escalated. I tried to focus on what's happening before my eyes as growls and his snorts and climbing up her leg together with my mum's screams almost sent me crazy. My fear and shock quickly turned to rage when I folded out the blade from my pocket knife and threw myself at this humping dog man at full speed. I crashed into him and took him down to the ground in one foul move, reminiscent of my old Pop Warner days as I slit the knife between his shoulder blades. I could hear him yelp. Now that's pretty good going. Pretty good going. If that guy stayed in character when he's been attacked by this vicious son who is not happy at seeing a man dog like trying to attack his mum. I am struggling to keep a straight face here, ladies and gentlemen, but we will go on. I heard his animalistic growls again as he lunged forward, and bit my forearm. Holy shamoly, he's even biting people. This guy takes it to the next level, right? A bolt of pain ran up my right arm as I tried to pry his mouth open from the mask. Everyone knows you just punch it right hard on the beak, right? I heard his animalistic growls again. And Mikey, what the hell are you doing? Was all I could hear from behind me. Well, this wrong, let me tell you. And I felt him trying to pull me closer with one arm, but I fought back with everything until I heard the police sirens. The most human look of fear washed over his eyes as he opened his mouth and ran out on all fours out the back door and over the neighbour's fence, still acting like a dog. I was bleeding everywhere and my mum wore a confused look on her face the entire time. When the police cleared the house in the neighbourhood with no reports of a 7-foot-tall man dressed in a dog suit, I wasn't particularly surprised. I deliberately left out the details of the dog suit when the police asked me. I didn't need the police looking at me, side-eyed, as they would. We made a report as usual, and investigators chalked it up to a homeless derelict who thought that he could fit himself into my mum's home. I still didn't answer a lot of questions for me. For now, Mum is staying with me at my apartment, and I have an appointment lined up with a psychiatrist for her the next morning. I love her so much, and I just want to do what's best for her, but that doesn't include letting a man pretend to be her dog, obviously. And what I should have done all along was look out for her. I hope this whole episode is over. And reading it about a year from now, it might seem a little less terrifying and a little more funny. But the growling I hear every so often outside my door as I write this doesn't help ease my mind. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, you're all thinking, that has to be made up, right? But just how disturbed a mind do you have to make up a ghost story or a no-sleep story that includes a man dressed as a dog who's trying to replace not only your father, but the recently deceased family dog? It takes the weird, the wonderful, and the quite absurd, the very absurd that we have to deal with on a daily basis living in this crazy world, to even newer levels, even more bizarre levels than I'd ever thought possible. I'll be back in a moment. We'll have a little talk. We'll make sure there aren't any dogmen imposters running around the place. And we might try and find another one. Truly am still trying to figure out if it's more disturbing if that story's true, or somebody actually sat and made that up and thought that would be a good horror story. What kind of glimpse does that give us into the psyche of that person? And if we were to know that person, should we check to see if they've got a man-sized doggy suit? Because it sounds to me like they protest too much. They've gone into far too much detail. It sounds like, yes, furries have gone mad, Connie. That's how it all goes wrong. The confessions of a potential bad man. Bad doggy. Bad doggy. Exactly. ZX used to be a werewolf, but he's alright now. Ooh, well, that was bad. That was really bad. Okay, okay. So if we come back over here, what is the chat room saying? Yes. I think what we've got like 40 odd people in here. I think it's 40 odd people, right? Um yeah, pretty cool. 39 viewers, 41 likes. Not very often that happens. More likes than we have viewers. That's tremendous. So listen, I've got this book here that Jules gave me. I think it was Jules. It was Jules or Connie, one of the two. But we're gonna like randomly pick some stuff out of here, I think. Because it's called The Book of the Bizarre, Freaky Facts and Stranger Stories. And I've opened it up here at Sympathy. Sympathy for the Devil. Strange rock and roll stories. Will we do that? Or will we do, right, one for strange rock and roll stories, or two for aberrations, fascinating phobias, and odd ancient beliefs. One for rock and roll woo, two for the strange. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Ken me, woofologist at large. I am, sir. I am. I'm the world's leading and arguably only qualified woofologist. I tell you, dude, it took me a while. Took me a while to get my doctorate, doctor of woo. Hey, the internet is full of fake doctors nowadays, right? Ah. Two. Okay, two's in. Passing strange. Snap pole's over. You had long enough. Okay, so first up it says here, faces that only a mother could love. Damn. Is this talking about me or Dave, or who's it on about? So Creo was a wild child who lived in Europe in the 1880s, sometimes known as Darwin's missing link. She sported a prognathic face, one where the lower jaw extends beyond the upper part of the face. All right, good looking bugger. And her head and face were covered. Were covered with a thick mane of hair down to the neck. Creo, and that's Krao, was first put on exhibit in the freak show when she was just 7 years old. She was known for throwing temper tantrums, during which she would writhe on the ground and attempt to pull her hair out of her face. Jojo, the dog-faced boy, oh, come on, you have to be making this up. You can't go from a guy dressed in a dog suit pretending to be a 7 foot tall dog, man dog, replacing the family dog, to now we're reading about Jojo, the dog-faced boy. I don't know. I don't know if this one's the best. We'll need to find some ghost stories, I think. Surely there's ghost stories in here. I don't want to be reading about poor people and their afflictions. Let's see. Something wicked. The annual chicken show. No idea what that is. Histories, mysteries. Oh. Tender. No. Coincidence or synchronicity. Morbid writers and tortured artists. Ooh. We have got, still on the books and in the ether, the weirdest laws in the world. Passing strange. That was that weird one we just tried to do. The vapors, which is medical maladies and curious curses. We've got superstitions and curses. And the dark side of the moon. I think we're going to go for superstitions and curses. How does that sound, folks? Let's see where we are. Page do we need to be on? Let's see. The things I do to source the woo, ladies and gents. Okay then, so no, that's the wrong one, you absolute Crazy person. The dog man took over there. 250. Damn, I was nearly on it. Okay. Okie dokie. There we go. There we go. So we've got superstitions and curses. Starts off with a little poem. Double, double, toil and trouble. Fire burn and cauldron bubble. Fill it out a fenny snake. In the cauldron boil and bake. Eye of newt and toe of frog. Wool of bat and tongue of dog. Adder's fork and blind worm's sting. Lizard's leg and howlet's wing. For a charm of powerful trouble, like a hell broth, boil and bubble. And that comes from William Shakespeare's Macbeth. Yes, indeed, I remember doing Macbeth in school. Absolutely fantastic, fantastic play. Goes on to say here, finding the four-leaf clover. The belief that four-leaf clovers are good luck comes from the Druids, ancient residents of the British Isles. Several times a year they gathered in oak groves to settle legal disputes and offer sacrifices. They ended their gatherings by hunting for four-leaf clovers because they believed a four-leaf clover enabled its owner to see evil spirits and witches and therefore avoid these types of things. There we go. It goes on to say knocking on wood. In the Middle Ages, churchmen insisted that knocking on wood was part of the tradition of prayer since Christ was crucified on a wooden cross. But the tradition of knocking on wood actually started several thousands of years earlier with a different deity. Both Paleo-Americans and ancient Greeks developed the belief independently, we're told, that oak trees were the domain of an important god. By knocking on an oak, they were communicating with the god, small g, and asking for his forgiveness. The Greeks passed their tradition on to the Romans, and it became part of European lore. The oak's power was eventually transferred to all types of wood. Very interesting. Opening an umbrella indoors. This was one that used to annoy me when I was younger. Same as putting new shoes on a table. There's these old wives' tales that sometimes have me scratching my head, but this says here, in the 18th century, spring-loaded, metal-spoked umbrellas were new and unpredictable. Opening one indoors was courting disaster. The open umbrella could fly out of control and damage property or people. Therefore, opening an umbrella indoors was considered not so much bad luck as just dangerous. Mirrors. Oh, we've talked about mirrors on the show before, right? I remember watching one psychic medium, David Wells, his name is, Scottish guy, scrying into a mirror. And that's basically sitting there with some candles on and staring into the mirror. And it was quite disturbing because he was talking about how his face started changing and kind of flipped out a bit. But when I started to look into that, the whole scrying thing, looking into the mirror, the black mirror, the portal, something about mirrors. I always remember being in a hall of mirrors in Blackpool as well. That is so freaky. So freaky when you get to see that kind of repeating image and it just goes on into infinity. It's weird. But it says here, long ago, people looked at their reflections in water and were amazed because they thought they were glimpsing their soul. Now, when the reflected image was altered by waves or ripples, they thought that their soul was in danger. Over time, this belief morphed into the belief that if somebody broke a mirror, it would take 7 years for their soul to return to them. The term of 7 years was established by the Romans, who believed it took a body 7 years to repair itself. These beliefs eventually became the superstition that breaking a mirror means 7 years of bad luck. Another superstition says But should a mirror fall and break on its own, a death in the house is soon to be known. Even the house where the mirror breaks is thought to be cursed for 7 years. Looking at your reflection in a mirror by candlelight is also said to be bad luck. Goes then on to talk about candles. Candles are shrouded in mystery and superstition. First of all, beware of a candle that blows out during a ceremony. It's a warning that evil may be nearby. 3 candles or 3 lit candles in a row are bad luck, so be sure to blow one out if you see them. Light a candle inside a jack-o'-lantern on Halloween to guard against evil spirits that are lurking around. And if you look into a mirror by candlelight, you not only risk giving yourself bad luck, but also may find the souls of the dead. A corpse candle is a small, sourceless flame that floats through the air or floats through the night air and is believed to be a lost soul. This sight is considered an omen of death. Ooga booga. So it talks about salt. We see salt being used in protection sometimes. You sprinkle the salt around you. I've seen it in all these crazy kind of supernatural TV shows. I know what's happening. For thousands of years, superstitions about salt have been incorporated into religious, domestic, and business practices. Because salt could preserve food, people thought it had the power to protect them as well. And salt was poured into wells to purify water against evil, and poured on a chest of a corpse before burial. Mothers even salted their babies, believing that salt would lengthen their lives. In biblical times, people ate salt to ensure that business agreements would remain true. But salt was not always considered good luck. It was forbidden to speak the word salt while at sea for fear of the consequences. And in supernatural workings, salt is also relied upon. It is often placed in the corners of a room before a spell is cast, and people often take ritual salt baths to break harmful spells, all those voodoos, hoodoos, hexes, and curses, folks, put upon them. It is also understood that when we spill salt, friendly spirits to our right are warning us that evil approaches on the left, and tossing a pinch of salt over the left shoulder staves off the danger. I often wondered what that whole rigmarole of throwing the salt over the shoulder was about. Like, it's really kind of specific here. And it gets into Hungarian views and superstitions and ooga boogas and magic and all this good stuff. Traditional Hungarian culture is rich with superstition. Here are a few of the most prominent, because you never know when you're going to get stuck in Hungary. This could come in really handy. In fact, this could save your life one day. And you see, you think I come here and just waste your time, but no. One day, one of you might get stranded in Hungary. Rule number 1, approach no 7-foot men wearing dog suits. Number 2, listen closely. Here we go. If your left palm itches, money is coming to you. Well, hang on, we use that one over here as well. Are they like geographically specific? Is that why when I've had an itchy palm in my hand, it's not worked? Because I'm not in Hungary? Damn, nobody told me that part. So if your left palm itches, money's coming to you. If the right palm itches, you will soon spend the money. Oh, my left palm's going. Must be a PayPal on the way. I'm only joking. If salt is spilled from its container, let the one who upset the container clean it up. Makes common sense. Otherwise, poverty will strike the house, bringing great fights over money issues. If you place a loaf of bread upside down on a table, there will be fights in the house. If your nose itches, you have adversities. If you are traveling to visit somebody without an appointment and a bird flies across your path, forget the visit. The person will not be home. There you go. Now it goes into the weird and wonderful and wacky world of vampires, ladies and gentlemen. Bloody vampires. I told you they're real. So vampires first appeared in Slavic folk tales about 1,000 years ago. Villagers blamed disease and death, which were completely mysterious in those days, on corpses that only came out at night and sucked on people's blood. Eager to rid the village of this malevolence, people often dug up graves and dispatched those corpses that bore signs of being a vampire by impaling the body's heart with a stake or removing the head from the shoulders. Another way, the vampire could be permanently put to rest. Now, having watched my fair share of horror movies and TV shows, there are a whole arsenal of tricks and remedies and tools that you can use should we encounter the night walkers. Don't listen. Hey. Listen, as we move into the future, the high strangeness will just become normal. Would you really be surprised if there was reports of vampires in the news? Can I add vampires in the news to my 2021 bingo list, please? The undead could also be destroyed by exposure to daylight. Over the years, the vampire legend have acquired various characteristics, such as superhuman strength and hypnotic mind control abilities. That's when they glamour you. You come and look at me closely and they glamour you, ooga booga, all that jazz going on. Such as superhuman strength, hypnotic mind control abilities, and inhuman stealth. Yes. But you'll notice as many details of the old superstition remain to this day. Indeed. What else have we got here? Did you know that it's been said that if a baby looks at you from between its legs, you will get pregnant? No, I didn't know that. This is a book of really, really cool facts. What else have we got here? Superstitions of the rich and famous. So John Madden was coach of the Oakland Raiders football team, and he wouldn't let the team leave the locker room until running back Mark Van Egan was belched or had belched. So they had to wait for a man to burp before they would run out. That's pretty cool. We've got Confederate General Thomas Stonewall Jackson always charged into battle with his left hand over his head, allegedly for psychic balance. Go figure. Alfred Hitchcock. The cameo appearance Alfred Hitchcock made in each film he directed was for good luck. Now, his films were some creepy films. The Birds. Oh, man. Dang, dude. Former Chicago Bulls star Michael Jordan always wore his shorts from his college basketball uniform under his professional uniform. And he said, as long as I have these shorts on, I feel confident. Man, he feels like his shorts on. You see? Telling you. What else we got here? Jack Lemmon, the late actor Jack Lemmon, always whispered magic time as filming started on a new movie. That's a bit weird. American inventor Thomas Edison carried a... What is that? A storolite? A stone that forms naturally in the shape of a cross. All right. Legend has it that when fairies heard of Christ's crucifixion, their tears fell as these fairy cross stones. And storolite was also a lucky stone for US presidents Theodore Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson. So we've had enough out of there. And what we're going to do for our final act of our After Dark tonight is I'm going to put on some music, as I do. And we'll even put on some reggae. I think it's late night chilling out music. And I am going to dive back into the annals of Reddit r/nosleep. And we're going to get one more before we let you go today.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen. We've got time for one more from the No Sleep grab bag of woo. Hold on tight, folks. This could take it to a whole new level. Okay, now when we finish this one, I'll be back to hang out with you for 5-10 minutes or so. But I really hope you've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed it. I've had fun, and hopefully we'll be able to do a lot more of these. And hopefully we'll start to see the channel growing even quicker. Even more members coming on board. And I will keep coming back for more. I can't get enough of you, ladies and gents. But you need to let me know if this is something that you think is worth pursuing, or whether it's a waste of all our time. It's okay, we work together. You know, I bring the content, but only if there's a demand. And remember, I never like the idea of wasting anyone's time, so I always tell people if you've got anything more constructive to be doing, although at 4:15 AM in the UK, probably not. But listen, it is what we do around here. I like my woo, so do you. And this last story that we're about to get into here, holy shamoly, is my son making a deal with the devil. Recording number 1, this is called. I'm a priest. Well, a little bit of a lazy priest. I do most of my confessionals by placing an iPad in the little wooden box, personally telling people to step into the opposite side to gain their trust and make them think I'm listening. Then I sneak out for coffee while letting the pre-recorded priestly affirmations play out over the person's truth time. Don't worry, I'll listen in and I make my return when the person is ready for their penance. But today was different. The woman I spoke with today had a crazy story. Something I feel I need to share. And this came from a recording while I was away at the bathroom. But there is something wrong, and I may need some extra help. So, let's get into what he calls recording number 1. And I think for this, we need a little bit of thunderbolts and lightning. Very, very frightening thing. Scary meal. So, recording number 1. You see how I was channeling Freddie Mercury there? That was pretty cool, right? Can I get a gig as a channeler? What are you doing, Freddie? I'm just decomposing. I have always tried to be a good mother. Recording number 1. Sam Rodriguez, thank you very much, my dear friend. Now, I am no patch on any of the professional narrators that you'll find on Audible, or even doing the creepypasta thing here on the tubes, but thank you for saying that. Kev's already narrating better than a lot of other people reading these kinds of stories on the tube. Thank you. Really means a lot. So recording number 1, the laziest priest in the world. Imagine going to confession to fess up your sins only to find out that your priest, and this is me talking now here, folks, only to find out that your priest has kind of greeted you in person, but then he shoved on his iPad to say, oh, keep going, daughter or sister or whatever the bloody hell they say in these places. I don't know. Anyhow, let's get into it. Recording number 1. I've always tried to be a good mother. Raising a son with no father is a lot of hard work. I always tried my best to help Joachim grow into a fine young man. And as he grew up, we would always watch cartoons that sparked his imagination. You know, his favourites were the ones with kids doing something unimaginable. The 2 boys that would go into the backyard every day and create something so fantastic that by the end of the episode, even I started to agree with the tattletale sister in the show that the boys should be more considerate with the audience's expectations of reality bending fun. Well, my son obsessed over the idea of an endless summer, getting down on his knees every night and whispering to God, begging to stay home one more day, even though it was Sunday night. And he knew he needed to brush his teeth for the specific amount of time told by the dentist, and the teachers were going to teach him something new and cool. But listen, back on topic, my son would say he promises to always do whatever God tells him. Which then he would ask, is that little voice in the back of my head telling me right from wrong? Please, my son would implore, speak a little louder. So then, if it is an endless summer, when I wake up tomorrow, I will know what to do to keep the endless summer flowing. He would have a small tear in his eye, which he collected in a small cup beside his bed, pulling the lid over it, saying through quiet blubbers, please let me know which voice you really are. But also, I'll only do something important. He would shake his little head. Only if it's really, really important, nothing weird. Then my son would always whisper something real quiet, making me anxious because that was his secret between him and God, he would say. You are just uncomfortable with the implications of eavesdropping on your son and hearing secrets. But also, there are secrets he was even too troubling to be spoken out loud. Creating a space within your child you are unable to access, says my neighbour through puffs of smoke. And maybe the prayers were just a way for you to get closer, to look inside of your son from a safe distance. Usually just outside his room in the doorway, right? Just a crack and an ear. Maybe even a cup placed against the lacquered wood, asked my neighbour, who thinks of herself as a pseudo-counsellor. Perhaps you can just FaceTime the priest during your child's confession so that you can see the priest and hear your son's secrets and get a better understanding via the perspective of a priestly selfie and the sounds of your son in tandem. This will make it feel like you're looking at the countenance of God, judgment or none, and hearing the boy's every thought. All the while he is freely spilling the proverbial beans in the safety of that little wooden confessional. But this is just what my neighbour says, and it makes me a bit uncomfortable as I sit at her kitchen table with her son, while my son is at Sunday school. Why isn't her son at Sunday school? That isn't what religion is supposed to be. Also, why is it that she never lets her son talk? She just talks to him and at him. It's more likely they are using walkie-talkies, but she never lets her fingers off the damn button. I don't know. I think where all my doubts started is with those little online video sharing apps. My son has never been the same since he started with his online influencing. He mostly makes videos that younger kids find funny, but even still, he's a lot of adults that are constantly following his accounts. It's not a bad thing, I guess, or at least that's just what I tell myself. I followed him with an account based around the same young girl's photo I'd found online after searching. Cute, nubile, under 18 girl with long blonde hair that is dyed a little green and wears only a band t-shirt with explicit sayings on them and trying to show off how much older she is, even though when she wears makeup she looks to be about 20, and without makeup she appears to be 12 if the mood and the camera lens are better than expected. All of this, of course, was my neighbour's suggestion again. My son said it was a way to make sure he could always keep me safe. Now, I've got no ideas. No idea what this is all about. This is getting really weird, a little wacky. I don't think I'm going to go on with this one because I think this is going to take a really weird and wonderful twist. So let me come back over here and I'll find... Now, this sounds better. This sounds better, ladies and gentlemen. This sounds better. Let me get a drink of coffee first. And then we'll get into something called There's Something in My House. That's more like it, right? That was getting a bit weird and wacky. Come on, admit it. That was a bit creepy. Like, what was the priest doing with, like, an iPad and... What? Who even knows? Sam, that honestly, when I was reading that, it was like multiple personalities had been writing that story, right? That was weird. But it is After Dark on KBS. We do like the weird, right? Right? But not too weird. Not like men in dog suit weird, although that was fun. Woof woof. Yes, indeed, ZX. It's starting to get bright outside as well. Oh dear, not so much. Well, it is after dark, right? It's getting bright. Yes, Bernays, I am a pseudo-psychologist, if you didn't know. I've got absolutely no qualifications in the field of pseudo-psychology. Yes, Karen, that was getting a little bit weird, wasn't it? I think we all could gauge where that was going. Nowhere good, ladies and gentlemen. Nowhere good. But this one sounds a little more promising. There's something in my house. The title says it all, really. There is something here. I've been keeping a journal of all the strange occurrences so far, but it's finally time to bring in some outside help. I need your help. I moved into this house about 4 years ago. I started keeping this journal in 2019, which has truly confused me because by my timeline, we're only in 2021. She started this in 2019, 4 years ago. Holy shamoly, how long have I been streaming? Have we gone through a time warp? Ladies and gentlemen. Shh. Anywho, since then I have heard voices in different places. Someone in the kitchen likes to say hi when I turn around, and in the stairs it almost sounds like static with all of these whispers in the background. And of course I can't forget the thing in my closet that opens the doors when my lights start flickering. I didn't sleep in my room for a week after that. I moved back there though, after I woke up in the middle of the night to someone standing over me. their hair covering their face, but they were a little too tall, and their arms were a little too long. I tried telling a few people, but for the most part, they blamed it on my imagination. Some of it might be imagined, but only the dreams, right? There's another thing. My nightmares have started getting more realistic, more painful, and harder to wake up from. I keep passing in them, and it hurts. It hurts every time. I've been shot, stabbed, set on fire, fallen, broken bones, been attacked by something with claws, and even bled out. I shouldn't know what any of that feels like, but now I do. I can't wake myself up until I pass, and even then, sometimes it's just blackness, darkness, until my alarm goes off. I've even seen it a few times, not just in dreams, but in real life. What I saw on the couch isn't the bad guy, the shadow is. I'm not saying the the couch creeper is a great sign, but it's far from my main worry. You see, the shadow, it follows me. Sometimes it's in mirrors and distorts my image. Sometimes it just stands up or crouches on one of my counters. Sometimes it chases me up the stairs, and I dread the day that it may catch me. Oh, and speaking of mirrors, the only one I haven't seen the shadow in is the one that I found writing in last week. Yes, in. I couldn't get a picture of it, but it said, "As it ends." Whatever that's meant to mean. Last night was the final straw, though. I accidentally fell asleep while reading on the couch. That was my first mistake. I woke up to the TV on, but only showing static. I turned on the lights and it stopped. I know my writing is a little messy, but I'm still shaken up about it. Can't go anywhere. All I need is for this to stop. I need help stopping it. So here I am, desperate, scared, and sleep deprived. It's only a matter of time before I get hurt, physically. Maybe with your help, I can keep delaying it. I'm new to this scene, so I don't know much about these things, and I've tried checking police records and anything that happened in this house, but every time I did, something strange happened and got in the way. That's actually when the lights started flickering. Please ask me if you've got any questions, and I'll try to keep updating as more happens, but I can't promise. Because she's got something in her house, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, indeed. So listen, part of me hopes I've made you too scared to sleep, but obviously that's just my boisterous, playful side. I want to thank all of you for taking a couple of hours out of your day, night, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, whenever you are, wherever you are, whatever timeline you're on. We just heard from somebody who's living in the year 2023 if she started writing that 4 years ago in 2019, right? Just when things couldn't get any weirder. So listen, I have had real good fun doing this tonight. I really have. I hope you have too, and I hope it's something we can get used to doing. Because as you can tell, I'm full of beans at this time of the night, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. You get it, right? So the no sleep, the after dark, is definitely something I want to pursue further. I think part of me prefers doing this to a pre-show because I don't have that constraint of looking at the clock and having to run and get the guest and one mind, one hemisphere of the brain on the show, the other hemisphere on the brain, keeping me on the go and doing the... Yeah. Listen, Dave and Kev struggle with multitasking, shall we say. So through the night, I think it's the way to go. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Miss Slinky Moon. Well, nice name. And we've got Ron in there as well. Something different, something new. I hope you enjoyed it and hope you'll come back for more. If you want to support the channel further, but you don't have to. We've got memberships here. We've got a PayPal link in the description. That cuts out the middleman. And we will be back tomorrow with Scotty Lopez on the main show. And then Bill Bean in hour number 2. So we'll be dialing up the woo then as well. I hope you can join me for that. Thank you so much for joining me on not 1, not 2, but 3 shows we've had today. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have. Until next time, you keep it real out there. And remember, keep your mind open. Keep looking for the woo, but not to the point where your brain turns to black goo. A big shout out to Luna, to War, to ZX, Bernays Sauce. We've got Buzzacino. We have got Moron, Mrs. Slinky Moon. Big shout out to Mr. Slinky Moon as well. We've also got Karen. Leslie, thank you Leslie for the dono. Much appreciated. We've got Jules in there. Remember, Jules will be appearing on the Kev Baker Show with Nano Girl this coming Tuesday. Bernays Sauce, Mammoth Hunter, great to see you, Mamo. Mammoth is meant to be coming onto the show soon as well. I will name and shame her so that we get this show organised and we get our archaeologist all the way back from Australia. And talking Australia, Thursday the 17th, Friday the 18th in Australia, we're going to have Evan and Stephen Strong back on the broadcast. Yes, indeed. Big shout out to Jocelyn, Karen, Sam Rodriguez, good to see you. Nace, my brother. I'll be joining Nace on Freaky Friday. We've got Ace shouting out the good woo. Thank you, Ace. 33rd degree woo master. Thank you, War. Who else we got in there? Jules, we got Greg Silverado. Good to see you, man. Sam, good to see you. Luna again. Always good to have a Luna. There we go, Karen. ZX on that. Lewis, good to see you. Who else do we have in there? War. Connie was first in the chat today. If I've missed you, it is not deliberate, folks. I'm going to love you. I'm going to leave you. We are out of here. Keep your mind open. Keep looking for the woo, but not to the point where your brain turns to black goo.